I followed the same guide to crack interviews from these companies before even finishing my master's. And I was fortunate enough to land offers from these companies so far till date. If you also follow this guide, I'm sure you're going to rock any sort of interviews. So let's learn. I am Ravi. I come from southern part of India, from a typical middle class background. I did my undergrad from a normal university, and then I started my career with a consulting firm for a very low salary. And then after a couple of years of work experience back in India, I came to US to pursue my master's. With this sort of background, if I manage to crack all these interviews from these companies, you can do it too. Now, most of the companies follow a standard process. That is a tech phone screen followed by an onsite. Onsite will contain 4 to 6 rounds of interviews. And you can also choose a programming language of your choice. Now, if you're looking for what programming language that you wanted to start with, I would encourage you to go with Python, because the lines of code that you write in order to solve a problem is much lesser when compared to other programming languages because of the internal functions that are available in this language. And one more thing, if you're in like your last semester of undergrad or masters, I strongly encourage you to take easy courses so that you will have more time in order to prepare for interviews. What matters is not your graduate degree. Of course, it matters, but the most important part is landing in an amazing job. There are 3 parts in an interview. First, coding. Second, behavioral. And third, system design. In this video, I'm going to cover mostly on the coding part, but I will be covering the other 2 concepts in my upcoming videos. Don't forget to check out the description for all the materials and the links that I will be covering as part of this video. Here is a plan for 12 weeks. I divided the concept and the problems week by week. Before starting your prep, rule number 1. On day 1, it's very, very tough to solve even a simple coding question. I still remember my first day struggling to understand how a linked list worked. So do not jump into lead code. Let's jump into week 1. As part of first week, try to understand the fundamental data structures like arrays, strings, linked lists, stacks, queues, and hashing. Write a program to insert, search, and delete elements for all of these data structures. And also try to learn about runtime and the space complexity for each of these operations. If you already know all the basic things for all of these data structures, you can skip to week 2. As part of second week, focus more on matrix, binary trees, binary search trees, and advanced data structures like trie, disjoint sets, self-balancing BSDs. Now, when I say try to understand about these concepts, you got to understand how the insertion, updating the elements or deleting the element works for all of these data structures. As part of week 3, focus more on concepts like recursion, dynamic programming, and backtracking. Now, this might be a little tricky week because these concepts are little complex to understand when compared to your last 2 weeks of prep. So, videos from Tushar Rai actually helped me to understand these concepts much better. So I encourage, if you are struggling to understand these concepts, watch a lot of videos. Now, as soon as you enter into week 4, you should start solving problems, which is like the key to success. As part of this week, start solving problems of arrays and strings only. Search top frequent questions in lead code and follow 5-3-2 rules to solve these questions. Say if you want to solve like 20 string questions and 20 array questions as part of this week, then out of which you got to select 50% medium, 30% easy, and 20% hard questions. In most of the interviews that I faced, 50 to 60% of the coding questions are based on arrays and strings. So whenever you start solving the coding questions related to this area, make sure you understand and write the efficient solutions. As part of fifth week, start working on linked list, stacks, and queues, focusing more on linked lists as this will be like the basic foundations for a lot of programs that you're going to solve. I also want to talk a little bit about pattern matching. Instead of solving 200 or 300 lead code questions, if you understand the pattern behind solving all these problems, it's going to be a much easier way in order to understand, in order to memorize. For example, here I list down all the questions that could be solved by sliding window approach. Now, as part of 532 rule that I said earlier, all of these programs is considered to a single program. Now, if you solve all these 10, you can't consider that I solved 10 questions for this 532 rule. Because with little tweaks, you can solve all these programs. By now, as you already solved a lot of questions related to linked list in earlier week, it's much easier to solve questions related to binary trees, binary search trees, and graphs. From week 6 onwards, make sure to take contests like weekly and bi-weekly from lead code. Coming to week 7, focus more on problems solving related to advanced data structures like tries, disjoint sets, and also concepts like recursion and backtracking. Now, you must have already did some of the programs in last week related to graphs, and you must have used these concepts in your last week. So, that's a plus plus. Now, going to next 3 weeks, week 8, week 9, and week 10, you gotta do like a mix and match of all these data structures. This gives a better understanding of how to solve a problem by using patterns. So as soon as you solve a problem, you got to relate to the previous programs that you did and whether you can bucketize to the same pattern or not. There are so many materials that are available to guide you how to program, but there are like very limited resources that help you to prepare for behavioral interview questions. I prepared a cheat sheet for myself in order to solve or approach these behavioral questions, which I still use now, with which I have managed to crack all these behavioral rounds. I use the STAR format, which is nothing but situation, task, action, and result in answering all these questions. If you want to get access to this material, like this video and subscribe to my channel. Paste your email address in the comments. In the last 2 weeks out of 12 weeks master plan that we discussed, you need to do or take a lot of mock interviews, focusing more on coding as well as the behavioral rounds. There are great sites to take mock interviews like PAMP and InterviewBit. Check it out. Here is a secret how I memorized all the concepts and the patterns. Let's imagine on day 1, you solved like 5 programming questions. Now on day 2, instead of solving like a fresh set of programs, try to recollect the problems and the solutions that you did on previous day. If you're skeptical about one of the solutions, go back to your notes and see the approach. By following this and doing this consistently, you will definitely remember all the patterns that you used. Every day, spend not less than 2 hours in solving problems. Now, if you are stuck with any concept or a pattern, and if you feel it is overly complicated, there are a lot of videos that I suggest you watching of that particular concept alone. That's it. You are ready to crack any interview if you followed this guide thoroughly. After all this hard work, you will definitely land with an offer, but it might not be a great one. If you want to know how to negotiate better salaries and land with an amazing offer, please stay tuned for my next video.